Good morning. Welcome to day 3 of the Ctbuh 2010. My name is David Scott. I'm not Anthony Wood according to the programme. Unfortunately, Anthony has had to leave. He has had a family emergency, and last night he returned to Chicago. So Anthony's put in an enormous amount of effort to help the conference to be the success that it's been, and we all hope him well and that things work out at home. I know that he will be very upset to miss today's event. We have got a very great program. I hope you all enjoyed the site tours yesterday and the cultural tours. I went to Kanchenjunga, a wonderful building by Charles Correa, 35 years old and still a great example of sustainable design. And I have to say, one of the things that really surprised me was, why hasn't that technique been developed further? Because it is very sustainable, very effective, and a great piece of architecture, appropriate and developed here in Mumbai. And even after 35 years, it's got still a wonderful sense of modern architecture and engineering, a great place to be in, and these lovely through ventilations, which means that there was no need for any air conditioning, except in the apartments where the owners didn't know how to use the building the way it had been designed. So very interesting. And on the way there, we saw an enormous amount of construction, some wonderful, some terrible, both inefficient, ineffective, and we hope that by sharing some of the international experience here today that you can learn from the good bits and not copy the international mistakes that have been made elsewhere. The more I come to India, the more difficult it is for me to understand it. It's a great place. The city is incredibly vibrant. And as you develop Mumbai, I hope that you don't turn it into another Western city. There is something really special here that you need to cherish and develop in your new features. And we saw an enormous amount of infrastructure projects everywhere. Dr. Galkwad showed us yesterday that Mumbai is not short of ambition. And I know that some people couldn't make it back till 9 o'clock because of some lack of infrastructure. But I hope that you are successful in fulfilling your ambition. In comparison, in New York, I've been recently working on the 2nd Avenue subway line, which is the newest line to be built in the city. We started that 35 years ago, and we hope that we will start the first tunneling in the next year. So you are moving much faster than many other cities. And it's a reflection of the fact that although Mumbai is an ancient city, in global development terms, it's still quite a young city. And you've got plenty of time to mess it up, but also plenty of time to make it successful. And there's a long way to go before it's too messed up. And I'm not sure how tall buildings will feature in the development of Mumbai, but they will certainly feature. And the idea of doing a redevelopment on an area-by-area basis rather than on a building-by-building basis obviously makes some sense, and it's certainly worth a try. And I would encourage the people of Mumbai to actually experiment with an area-by-area redevelopment in the heart of the city, potentially before it's too late. The conference so far has talked about ambitions, it's talked about philosophy, and today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that have been implemented and some of the new advances that are being talked about in the industry as a whole. When we're talking about solutions, I hope that these in some way are not solutions for Mumbai. In that, I mean, I hope we're not going to transfer an idea simply from one place to another, but that you will take parts of these solutions and use them to develop Mumbai's own vernacular. And today we've got a great lineup of speakers that are going to talk about both new technology, but how buildings are used, and we are also going to give you a unique perspective from the public's point of view. The first presentation is by Dr. Ken Yang from Llewelyn Davies Yeang, entitled The Ecoskyscraper, Critical Regionalistic Considerations. Can we please welcome Dr. Ken Yang to the speaker podium?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk today about some of my ideas about designing the green skyscraper. For many of us, for many of you, the eco-skyscraper is viewed in two ways. First, as in terms of accreditation, and second, in terms of engineering. Many architects and engineers see the skyscraper that if it's rated green, platinum, LEED, or BREEAM, it is considered green. The question I want to ask, propose towards you today, is how do we go beyond accreditation? For many architects and engineers today, they also see green design as one of engineering, that you will stuff a building with enough photovoltaics, solar collectors, and so forth, you have a green architecture. I think we need to go beyond that. This is one of our projects, the extension to the Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. It's under construction now and finished by end of this year, and has a flue wall in the corner there. And, oh, you can't see the words. But it's rated BREEAM 77%. Now, does it make it a green building? The highest you can get in BREEAM in the UK is 85 points. So if another 8 more points, I would become the greenest hospital in the UK, or the greenest building in the UK. At the moment, at 77 points, it is the greenest hospital. So I believe that we need to go beyond this, go beyond accreditation, and go beyond engineering. I'm going to present a number of ideas today about green design. The first one is the idea of vertical urbanism. Most skyscrapers today are like this image that you see on the screen, a stack of concrete plates homogeneously one on top of each other. Now, why has a tall building got to be like this? Somewhere along the line, some engineer said, yes, it'd be easier to stack everything together, have the same floor plate design, and extend it, extrude it all the way up to the sky. Of course, the same architect, if you asked him to design a medium-rise or low-rise building, he would do something like this. He would have atriums inside, he would have programs inserted into it. So why can't we design a tall building in the same way that we design low-rise and medium-rise buildings? The answer is yes, we can, but none of us do. So my challenge to all of you architects and engineers today is try and design the tall building in the same way as you would design a low-rise and medium-rise building. What I try to do in my work is to take whatever that is pleasurable at a horizontal plane, urban design at a horizontal plane, and flip it vertically. So that means all the concepts of urban design, like placemaking, figure-ground relationships, business, and so forth, flip it vertically. In other words, design it instead of a stack of series plates, but like this huge burger. In this way, what you have is a city in the sky. And so we should design the tall building no longer as a stack of plates, but really as a vertical city, as vertical urban design. Some time ago, I went for a lunch in which the guest of honor was the Duke of Gloucester. The Duke of Gloucester, as you know, was a cousin of the Queen of England. And he was an architect until he gave up his duties, gave up his role as an architect for his royal duties. And the lunch was organized by the British Council, and he was an architect and I was an architect, and the British Council set me next to him. I had just written a book about these ideas, and I call it The Vertical Theory of Urban Design, Rethinking the Skyscraper. And so I gave a copy of the book to His Royal Highness, and I said, Your Royal Highness, here's a copy of my latest book, Vertical Theory of Urban Design. And he said, oh, can that remind you of my definition of dancing? So I said, Your Royal Highness, I don't know what is your definition of dancing. And he said to me, dancing is the vertical expression of horizontal desires. I said, exactly that's how we should design our tall buildings, the vertical expression of horizontal desires. And so I started to design the skyscraper with different programs in it, with paths in the sky in it, with various alternative circulation systems. Instead of just one central system, there may be several multiple. So in this way, we try and create a city in the sky rather than just a homogeneous stack of plates. And this is one of my recent projects in Germany for a vertical city in which the buildings are stacked together in a series of programs in the sky. And so there you are. You have multiple programs, multiple circulation systems. You can, in the last diagram, I indicate that you could even have larger distances between floor to floor, so you can insert secondary floors into it and tertiary floors into it. The next is the idea of ecological nexus. In nature, everything is connected. It's us human beings that fragment nature. We chop up nature into pieces. We cut, we convert, pieces of land by laying out roads and bridges, and we convert the cow into a burger. The ecologist sees the Earth as covered by this thin film called the biosphere, where living organisms live. And within this biosphere are units in nature, which are called ecological systems. Now, I'm sorry you can't see this, but ecological systems consist of both biotic components as well as abiotic components to make a whole. However, what we've done is that we have designed all our buildings synthetically. If you look at the building like we are in right now, everything in this building is inorganic except human and the bugs. So what we need to do is to try and bring back vegetation into nature, into the built environment. Obviously, the most simplest way is to have sky courts, as you can see in the diagram on the left, or you can have a spotty relationship, as you can see the one in the middle. But ideally, what you want to do is to connect it, because without this connectivity, nature is fragmented, nature is chopped up. And so those of you who put sky courts in your buildings, make sure they're connected to the ground, because this is what ecology is about, because if it's not connected, then you've quarantined nature. And so what you want to do is to create ecological corridors, or your spiral relationship all the way up to the sky. Of course, you don't exactly, there are species in nature that can move from one piece of ground to another piece of ground, a patch of green to another patch of green, without being connected, species such as birds, insects, and butterflies. But ideally, we need to connect them, make it continuous all the way up to the top of the building. This is one of my early projects, a tower for IBM, where here we have a series of step planters going all the way up. The planters have a trellis in between, and this enable continuous vegetation going up to the top of the building. Another project is this tower, which is a 40-story tower in Kuala Lumpur, and here we have vegetation on the outside and gives it what I call an indeterminate look. I love this image because this is, for me, what a green architect should be. A green architecture should not look pristine, should not look modernist. It should be like this, it should be fuzzy. And when this was completed, my friends called it the hairiest building in Southeast Asia. And so what we need to do is to have this continuous vegetation. This is a scheme that we designed in the cold climate. And the continuous vegetation in the cold climate has to be inside the building. And so what we have is an atrium inside, and then the vegetation climbs up to the top of the building, where it hits the edges, it goes into a sky court. There's also linked by sky bridge to the upper part of the building. And the atriums are recessed into the facade, and they are enclosed to protect the vegetation during the winter months. The next idea is to to see the skyscraper in this way. The idea that I have is what I call the eco bridge. Now, if you have two sites which are separated by a nasty highway in between, what happens if you bridge across it? What happens if you vegetate the bridge? Then instantaneously you have created a connected ecosystem in which the species are able to migrate from one part of the site to the other part of the site. They're able to interact with each other. It creates a larger habitat with a greater volume of resources for sharing between the species, and then generates a higher level of biodiversity, and being higher biodiverse, it is much more stable. So with this scheme that we designed, what we did was that not only did we connected the vegetation on the ground plane in this way, we brought it across the hinterland through this ecological bridge. So in this way, what we've done as human beings are rectified. The roads that we have built to cut up the landscape is now connected. So in this way, what we have is a greater ecological whole. The next idea is what I call the eco-cell. That means our connection is not just vertically, but also going down to the ground. This is the master plan for a site where we extended from one part of the site and brought it by a bridge down to the other side. But within this master plan, in the podium, we have not only, the first thing we did was to roof the top of the building, brought the vegetation and the biotic components down to the ground to connect to the landscape, tucked it into the floor. But not only that, we cut voids in it so we can bring the vegetation, daylight, and sunlight into the bottom of the building. So these are where the eco-cells are. And then within this eco-cell, you can see we have provides opportunity to bring vegetation all the way down to the ground, provides opportunities to bring daylight to the inner parts of the building, provides opportunities for natural ventilation, and at the bottom you could have a detention pond, or even a living machine if you wanted to. Here's an example of an eco-cell that we designed in Singapore, and this is viewed from the ground plane, eco-cells on the left-hand side, and this is the view at the basement level. It brings daylight vegetation into the space, and that's the building, the National Library in Singapore, which was completed a few years ago. In Singapore, everything is high-rise, and so this is a high-rise library, which is 120 meters high. The other idea then is to see the building. Oh dear, the slides, the background's gone. Is it? Can you see it? Okay, I hope you can read it. Is to see green design as the integration of four eco-infrastructures: the gray, the blue, the red, and the green. Now, I color-coded it because this makes it easier for me to communicate the idea of what green architecture, green master planning should be. The gray is eco-engineering. I specifically made it general. I didn't want to mention particular technology, but essentially all green architecture has engineering, whether we like it or not. Our quality of life requires us to have engineering to handle all the different aspects of our lifestyles. And so all green architecture has this, what I call the gray infrastructure, which is eco-engineering or clean tech or clean technology. The second eco-infrastructure is water, which is blue. It's blue because it is colored water. In our design, we need to close the water cycle as much as possible. We need to harvest the rainwater. We need to recycle and reuse the water within the built environment. We also have to practice sustainable drainage so that the water that falls on the land stays in the land and goes back into recharging the aquifers rather than into the drains, into rivers, and it's gone forever. So that's the second infrastructure. The third eco-infrastructure is the red infrastructure because that's our human infrastructure, our human systems, our regulations, and our rules and laws. And what this clearly means is that we have to change our lifestyles. We cannot live this way that we've been living at the moment in a profligate way, and we've got to have the red infrastructure. And we haven't fully developed our new lifestyles and new economies with new industries, but this is to indicate that we've got to do this in our new built environment. And the fourth infrastructure is the green infrastructure, which is nature's utilities. Now, nature has its utilities in the same way that we human beings have our utilities, because even though these cannot be visible, there's photosynthesis taking place, there are nutrient flows, there are material energy flows, and so forth. Decomposition is taking place. Nature's utilities are just as important as our human utilities. As I mentioned earlier on, this green infrastructure has to be connected. If it's not connected, if it's patches of green, then it is not a utility, it is just patches of green. And so green architecture, I see, is the integration of these four infrastructures into a whole. Now, if you take this as a framework for looking at green design, and you can evaluate some of the projects, then some of the eco-cities in the world, the famous ones such as Dongtang or Mazda, yes, they have very clever engineering systems. Some endeavor to close the water loop with a blue infrastructure. Some of them have new lifestyle systems and new rules and regulations. But all of them haven't got this continuous green infrastructure. And to me, without nature's utilities, without this green infrastructure, it is not an eco-city, it is just a chunk of engineering. So what you need to do is to not just integrate the biomass, the abiotic components into the built environment, but we've got to have these four basic infrastructures, the green, the blue, the red, and the gray. There's a scheme master plan that we did in Bangalore, and it's also on a piece of site next to a forested land. And what we've done is they've collected all the vegetation on the bottom left-hand side of the site, on the southwest, right along the forested area, and then we stretch it across the site in the same way you would stretch a piece of chewing gum, and that becomes our green infrastructure. And then this is the red water infrastructure. So we have a series of retention ponds which bring the water back into the ground. I'm sorry you can't see this, but this is, oh sorry, I lost a slide there. Now, what I try to do then is if we can have these four infrastructures in the master plan, what happens if we flip it vertically in the same way that I mentioned earlier on? And so in this scheme that we designed in Gurgaon, near Delhi, what we created is this green infrastructure on the building that starts from the ground, weaves its way up to the top of the building, and goes down in the other side. So that's the eco infrastructure in the high rise. Now, okay. Green design isn't just about designing a building. All of us, design a building and we think we've done our bit, but actually that building sits in a context, sits in the regional context, and we have to see our responsibility as ecological designers is not to see buildings in isolation, as like an island, but in its regional context. This is a scheme that we designed in Istanbul, and you can see the site is on that left-hand side. What we as human beings have done is that we've eaten to the landscape. Over a period of 20 years, you can see that we have actually eaten the landscape, going all the way up to the top of the site, all the way down to the waterfront, the other waterfront. And so in our scheme here, we said, let's reconnect nature, because what human beings have fragmented nature, and this scheme, we propose that we should reconnect it and make nature whole again and recreate this ecological system. And so how do we do this? Because there are existing roads, existing highways, existing developments in the same way that what you have in Mumbai. And so the idea we had was to try and use the ecological bridge again, to try and bridge across green areas, to try and reconnect the city and try and make the city whole. And so here's the model of the scheme, and the red squares show where the ecological bridges are. And so in this way, we made that part of Istanbul a completed ecosystem, which is connected and made the ecosystem whole again. To make it justifiable, to make it commercially viable, we started to develop programs for this green and made it the single largest park that Istanbul can have. This is the various land uses to the site. This is the water infrastructure. This is the green infrastructure. That's the water system. That's the gray infrastructure of the roads and the utilities. And that's part of the infrastructure. So in that way, we make Istanbul whole again as an ecological system. So what I presented today are some of the ideas. I don't want to give all of it away to you. I've still got a few more. But these are some of my thoughts about how we could push the green eco-skyscraper to the next level, that go beyond eco-engineering and they go beyond accreditation systems.